listen.
This is Data-Driven Chat, and today we're talking to Nick Powdthavee. Nick is Professor of Behavioural Science at Warwick Business School. And Nick's entire career is about researching happiness and well-being. And he's an author, I don't know, is it 6 books now, Nick?
Well, it depends if you count Thai books as well. Books in Thai, I mean, but in English is there 2 and 4 now, I guess, in Thai. Yeah.
So
but,
yes.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for finding the time. I know that it's very challenging right now. So yeah, I mean, I have several questions for you, and I want to start with basically how did you become interested in happiness research, but more importantly, can you tell us how do you become a happiness researcher? I think not many people realize that you can make a career out of this.
Well, gosh, to be completely honest, I didn't know that I could make a career out of becoming a happiness researcher as well when I started, and it just happened by chance, really. I did my PhD in economics at the University of Warwick, where I am now, over 10 years ago now, and I was doing my PhD for the first 4 months on general equilibrium, basically computable general equilibrium, which don't ask me what it's about because I don't even know what it's about.
I love this field. It's like all papers start with proposition 1, and that's very, very mathematical.
It is very mathematical and very, very boring. For 4 months, and I didn't have any motivation to really do any research or to read paper. And just by chance, I came across Andrew Oswald. He wasn't my supervisor then, but he was doing really interesting research on happiness. So this was way back in 2000. So he has a couple of works already on well-being. And I just thought, okay, I'm just going to take my chance and just go and speak to him and kind of explain that I am interested in this. I have no idea what it's about. Is there any way that you would accept me as your PhD student? And I was very lucky that Andrew said, yes, okay, go on. Let's have one, because from what I know, his other PhD students weren't doing anything really well-being related. It's on labor economics, labor market. So that's how I got started. And I remember doing this kind of research and finding lots of interesting questions to ask, whereas before with computable general equilibrium, I didn't have any question to ask. You know, I wanted to know what is the happiness of people in South Africa? Does unemployment really hurt really badly to people? What about crime? Can happiness of one spouse transfer to the other spouse? And it just went from there, really. I just had a lot of questions, and I never really thought of it as work anymore. So yeah, that's just how it came about, really. And luck would have it, I did fairly well in the field, and this is where I am today.
Those people who have never heard about Andrew Oswald, we need to tell them that Andrew is one of the fathers of the field of happiness economics. And if you haven't read Andrew's work, you definitely should. I think you can read it in all the media, and please do go online and Google Andrew Oswald. You will learn a lot. So the next question is, I'm just wondering, so as someone who just did behavioral science as my kind of first degree, when you do research in happiness, does it really help you to cope with difficult situations? So in a sense, are you happier than the average person because you know the tricks, or does it help? Does it help? Yeah.
Well, that's a question I get asked a lot. I think I am quite lucky that I was born naturally happy. Mm-hmm. So it's self-selection in a way. So I selected myself to doing this. So I don't think the treatment effect is that strong for me. of the thing. I think there's a lot of reverse causality there. But have I learned a few tricks? Yes, I think I have. I know, for example, facts that are quite reassuring. Things like we are quite adaptive, we're quite resilient. As humans are quite resilient. We know that we make systematically wrong choices for our happiness all the time, and what are the biases associated with that making, that choice decision making. So I try to avoid some of those if I can. Things like sunk cost fallacy. We know that people tend to stick to wrong choices despite it doesn't pay off in the long run, just because we don't want to feel regret of making wrong choices. So I try to adopt that thinking. And so let's say if I make a wrong choice and I know that it doesn't make me very happy, I just tend to say, okay, that's sunk cost. It's okay to change my mind. And that has paid off quite a lot for me. I think I've made many wrong choices, but they tend not to last for that long. If I can change, I can change. Yeah.
What about kind of the life decisions? Because there are some pretty robust findings, say, about kids and about getting married or getting divorced, all these types of things. Do you sometimes? I mean, I'm not meaning necessarily these results, but sometimes when the outcome of research, are you thinking how it will affect your happiness before you make a big decision like this?
Well, I think for things like income, I know that it's not the most important thing in terms of predictors to well-being. So I don't obsess too much with income. I'm not sure whether that's me just kind of me as an individual is like that, or me as a happiness researcher is like that. It could just be a combination of both. But some of the things like, for example, my wife and I, we don't have kids. Whereas before I used to think that life can't be complete without kids. But then I realized that, it needs, there are pros and cons to everything. So having kids there, I'm sure there are many highs and lows, but so is, having no kids, very highs and lows. And we know that from the data that it's no different. There shouldn't be any stigmatization towards people who don't have kids. So those are the things that I've learned, trying to put my priorities straight in day-to-day life, trying to commute as less as possible. So there are important lessons that I've learned from that, from the research.
Oh yeah, I mean definitely. I mean the question of kids is something I think from female perspective, I can tell you it's a big decision. So I have a 3-year-old, and he's a very lively 3-year-old. I know that happiness research says that you become a lot happier when kids are kind of leaving home. I'm not sure I'm looking forward to that, but I certainly can see why some people can get happier when that happens. So can you tell us more about from the research perspective, what does make people happy? And I'm particularly interested in whether there are some kind of specific factors, like hard factors, that make us happy, or is it all context dependent? So you can essentially be happy for no good reason. I
think there's a combination of both. Yeah, there's a combination of both. One of the strongest predictors of different dimensions of well-being. So I need to explain first that when we tend to think of well-being, we tend to think of it as just fluffy, something that is not measurable. But research has advanced quite a lot now, and has seen that we can, to a certain extent, distinguish between cognitive well-being, things like life satisfaction, how satisfied are you with your life overall, and this tends to be associated with income, your socioeconomic status, marital status, and then there's day-to-day emotional health, which how often do you feel anxious, happy, laugh, smile, worries. These tend to fluctuate a lot in a day. It doesn't tend to be highly correlated with how rich you are, but it correlates a lot with how do you spend your day. And then there's eudaimonic, which is whether you feel your life has any purpose, any meanings. So the determinants of all of these three could be different, and a lot of it do overlap. So things like social relationships tend to come in very, very strongly across all dimensions. So if you have a good social interactions, somebody who you can rely on, you can talk to, that's very important for life satisfaction, as well as daily emotional health, and also, kind of feeling your life has purpose, has meaning. And I know that at the moment people are kind of lacking a bit of that because of the self-isolation and social distancing. So that's one thing that we need to always keep in mind, that how are we going to keep, being physically distant but still staying socially connected? And things apart from social relationship, health, clearly very, very important, probably second on the list, in many lists when we look at all of this. And things like income, only when you don't really have it. It's not about having a lot more. It's about, poverty is very, very detrimental to well-being. We don't adapt to poverty, but we adapt very, very quickly when we have sufficient income to any further income increase. So those sort of things provide very useful insights and give us priorities of what is it that we should, try to maximize and fulfill our days. Yeah.
Thank you. So I was wondering, if you look at your own research, what would be, if you had to pick like one very important thing that you discovered in your research, what would it be? I know that it's hard to pick one, but if you had to pick one.
If I have to pick one, does it have to be on happiness? Because I do other things on.
It doesn't have to be on happiness. Yes, you can talk about anything you're really proud of.
Well, there are. I mean, I can give you one thing from happiness that I'm proud of, and the other one from outside happiness that I'm proud of. I think in the happiness one of the most things that I'm proudest of is a study that I tried to calculate the shadow price of friendship, which is how much money, how much additional income does somebody, say, who has no friends, no social connections, required in order for he or she to be just as satisfied with life as if he or she has lots of friends. And I found that you probably require about £85,000 a year to raise your happiness, which kind of show that social relationships is very, very important. It's very, very strong. In order to pay somebody who has no social relationship for that person to be rich enough, to be happy enough as somebody who, with low income but have lots of friends, is about £85,000. So that's from happiness. From non-happiness related research, I like the research I did on my finding that people are willing to pay for really transparently useless advice, really useless things, like people are willing to pay money to see predictions of coin tosses. Right, so you can imagine that if I ask people to, you need to, let's say, place a bet on whether it's going to come out head or tail, and if they've seen, a streak of correct predictions of previous coin tosses, they tend to, they're quite willing to pay like 10% of their money, of their earnings, to see, okay, what is the prediction of the next coin toss, which is completely useless. But people are fallible, and that's what we found. So I think those are the two proudest research I've done.
Awesome. You mentioned, you already touched on the topic of, self-isolation and kind of the current situation. And obviously there are a lot of people now who feel anxious because they have to self-isolate, they have to be in quarantine. There are several countries, that are in quarantine right now. So I'm just wondering, what does research in happiness and well-being tell us about times of uncertainty? Are there any specific findings that could help people in these situations? What can we say?
Yeah, well, as I've mentioned before, staying socially connected is extremely important. Another thing is to try to see a purpose in this. So we know that purpose is quite very important. And we might feel that if we're at home all the time, there's no purpose, there's no meaning to this, and we can feel quite frustrated. But if we're reminded that there is a purpose to this, lives are being saved by us being home, and we are doing, even though we don't get the feedback straight away, we are contributing to something. So that's important reminder to have. And also, we know that attention is important. Attention, the reason why people feel quite low, quite depressed, a lot of the times is because their attention is attuned to the negative things that we hear on TV, or our imagination runs wild. So one thing, if you feel quite overwhelmed, switch off the TV. Don't read. I know it's hard, but don't read.
Don't read the news. Yes, that's
the news.
Yeah, my husband gives me every day. Like, don't open the news.
Yeah, because you will feel overwhelmed. As long as you know that if I'm staying at home, and it's quite nice to be at home. If you look for the positives, there are lots of positives about this. Or most of us, I mean, who have to commute to work, who have to work a lot of times, have dreamt of this day. of not having to commute, of not spend a bit more time with family. So we need to kind of direct our attention towards that positiveness of our life. Control what you can control. Things that you can't control, there's nothing you can do about. And yeah, just focus on what we have. I think that's quite important. Whether or not that's scientifically supported, I'm not sure, because I don't know if there's a lot of studies that show that. I mean, this is quite new to most of us. I don't think anybody who's alive now has experienced this before. So it's all new to us, and I'm sure more research will come out in the future to tell us, what is it that how do we improve this mentally and physically.
So do you think that I know that I just want to pick on something that you said, and you some of your work is about whether people remember good things, right? So in terms of trying to encourage people to remember something good that they did during the day. I know at one point you were recording. I don't know whether you're still doing that, but
I still do that 1 second every day.
Yeah. So is that something, do you think, that might help people as well? So just trying to focus on not necessarily recording it, but maybe just trying to remember one good thing about every day. Would that be something that would help?
We know that gratitude, keeping a gratitude diary helps. What are you thankful for?
So what is the gratitude diary? Can you just explain for people who never heard of it?
Gratitude diary is basically just, write down, what am I thankful for today? And then just basically is the training, you trained your mind to focus on good things that you're thankful for, and then that actually I used to have it worse, or other people have it worse. This is like today I can say I'm grateful and thankful that we can still walk our dog outside. Tomorrow we probably can't. There might be a lockdown today. We are thankful for the fact that we still have food to eat. We have Netflix. These things. So I think if people feel, I don't mean that people have to do that, keep gratitude diary, but if they feel a bit down, a bit depressed, something like that might help. Meditation definitely helps, directing our attention to something other than all these noises of negative and all these fearful anxiety could potentially help as well. Yeah.
Okay. Another question that I was just thinking today, actually, what is going to happen? So there are a lot of these, I don't know if you've seen them, there are a lot of these photos online showing, that, we will all have long hair because we all are going to not be able to see a hairdresser in the next few weeks and all that kind of stuff. But I think the more important question is what is going to happen to hairdresser and their family, because they are dependent heavily on the income. When people are coming to hairdresser shop to get a haircut. Similarly, there are people who are, say, working in services like waiters. So they are really hit by this crisis right now. So I'm just wondering, is there something that employers could do? Because, I don't think many people actually, you might have a personal relationship with your hairstylist, but I doubt you would know people who are kind of waiting the tables and, the people that you kind of get used to, but, currently they're probably feeling more anxious than anyone else. So is there anything, even, not taking the crisis situations, but let's just say even under business as usual, is there anything that employers can do to make their staff happier and potentially to expand on, the crisis situations? That would be.
Yeah, I think it's probably hard, but in general, the business as usual, we know that pay by itself is not that important as much as acknowledging your staff, making the job meaningful. The way we pay matters. If the staff feels part of the family, that that they're not just paying by their performance, they're actually paid by, like shares. Like if the company succeed, they also succeed because we share the profit. All of those things we know are quite important. Of course, we're living in a very strange situation right now. I don't even know the answer myself about how to help, because you can do so much, from the well-being research, but if they don't have any income, any safety net, we need to turn to the government. And I think the government is trying their best to find a way to kind of help workers, especially workers in the gig economy, on informal contracts. I have to admit that I don't know the solution myself at this moment, but I know that lots of economists, behavioral scientists are still talking about this, about what could potentially be the solutions to try to. But at the moment, we know our priority. Our priority is to save as many lives as possible. The economic side of it will come, and maybe we'll just have to deal with it after we can flatten the curve a bit more. But yeah, I'm afraid I don't have a good solution to share. Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you. So this is the last question, and I ask this to every single person that I interviewed gets this question. I was wondering if you could recommend one book and one film. What would these be? And you can only pick one.
Okay. You mean one book and one film?
Book and one film, yes.
Okay. Well, I have so many books that I love, but I guess I could give you the book that I read multiple times already, and I love it. And that is Michael Lewis, The Undoing Project. So that's basically a book about Danny Kahneman and Amos Tversky. And basically is almost like part of it is behavioral economics, part of it is psychology, part of it is just the history of those two relationships, two people's relationship. And I thought it was really, really well written. And as for the film, gosh, I'm not sure that's, I guess, but if I like to watch something, let's say on Netflix, that makes me feel good, probably When Harry Met Sally. I like that film a lot.
Mm-hmm.
you know. So probably that one.
All right. So so we could all probably rewatch it. I remember, I just realized it's been definitely many years since I watched that film. But it's a good film.
Yeah, it's really good. You should so you should actually watch it again if you have a chance. Probably it's still on Netflix, I think.
Probably. We will find out. Well, thank you so much, Nick. Thank you for finding the time, and thanks a lot for talking.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome, Ganna. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.